Saludos a toda la afición de Lucha Libre Online. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial en la tarde de hoy, directamente desde Reading, Berkshire, England, para el mundo. Doug Williams llega aquí a Lucha Libre Online. Mr. Williams, it is an honor for us to have you as our guest. How are you doing today?
Hello, Michael. I'm doing very well. Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
Thank you for being here. It's great for us to have you as our guest. You started your career inside the wrestling industry the year I was born, which makes it really interesting. I was born in 93. Wow. You started in 93. You've been here for 27 years doing incredible things that not many people thought you were, capable of doing because you came from England. At the moment, England was not so popular in terms of pro wrestling. How did you got hooked with this industry? What motivated you to be a pro wrestler initially?
Well, I don't know if you know much about the history of British wrestling, but it was in the 70s and 80s. It was a huge thing over here. It was on network television. So when I was very young, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I used to watch it with my father. We used to go to the shows. There used to be live shows every 2 weeks in the town that I lived at the time. And then there used to be a monthly big show in Reading, which is the nearest big city where I was born as well. And kind of, so I used to go with my father and watch it regularly. And then in kind of 1986, 87, they started showing WWF over here on the satellite TV channels. And I became a huge fan watching that. I was just 13, 14 years old. And I just developed my love for wrestling from there, really. I did judo. From the age of 11 until I was 18. And really, I mean, I did judo just for the reason to try and become a pro wrestler. Because back then, it was kind of necessary to have some kind of combat sports background if you wanted to get into pro wrestling, especially in England, where they liked you having some sort of background, before they even let you in.
Wow, let me translate this to Spanish. Él nos menciona que en los 70 y en los 90 la lucha libre en UK era big, era enorme. Estaba en las televisoras, la programación televisiva, pero llega un momento en los 80, 86 para ser exacto, WWF comienza a transmitirse en el Reino Unido y ahí como que le comienza a llamar un poco más la atención a él. Él hace judo cuando tenía 11 años de edad, a los 18 es que entonces tiene la oportunidad de hacer su debut. Y antes, para poder ser parte de la industria de la lucha libre, tenías que tener experiencia o entrenamiento en combat sports para poder llegar eventualmente a la industria de la lucha libre, que era un dato bastante distinto a lo que es ahora. On your early steps in your career, you had the opportunity to face a guy named Eddie Guerrero. In the UK, you had the opportunity to defeat him. For you as a wrestler, but also as a human, what do you learn from Eddie Guerrero that night?
It's funny you say early in my career, but I've been wrestling nearly 10 years when I wrestled him because it was 2002.
But it was early because you're 27-year pro.
That's it. But up until that point, I had really only wrestled in the United Kingdom and Germany, and nearly all domestic, British or European wrestlers. And the experience for me was understanding what it takes to be a world-class professional wrestler, understanding the level of athleticism, the skills, the knowledge that someone like Eddie Guerrero had. And the best way for me to learn that and experience it was to wrestle him. So I was very, very lucky. I had that opportunity and I learned a lot. I learned about how I needed to develop, what I needed to do to become a world-class professional wrestler. So I took those lessons. And it's very hard for me to identify to you what those lessons are specifically, other than to say that when you're in the ring with someone who's a world-class professional wrestler, they know what to do at every single point within the match. They know about ring awareness. They know about how to make the crowd act in a certain way. They know what moves they're going to do and when, without necessarily it being something that you've talked about previously. And this was a thing that I learned from him, and for that it was an invaluable learning experience for me.
Perfect. Él nos menciona que cuando él lucha con Eddie Guerrero fue en el año 2002 ya llevaba casi 10 años de carrera, él tiene 27 años de carrera. ¿Y qué aprendió Doc Williams de Eddie Guerrero? A ser un luchador de clase internacional, a comportarse de una manera en específico para obtener una reacción del público, a tener ese ring awareness que tenía Eddie, tiene muchos talentos internacionales. Aprendió básicamente a llevar su carrera al próximo nivel para poder entonces moldear a convertirse en lo que es hoy día, que fue una superestrella de calibre internacional. Eso aprendió del señor Eddie Guerrero. In the year 2004, you had the opportunity to go on a tour with Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan, where you had the opportunity to conquer the tag team titles. So you traveled to the world already before this date, but Japan is something different than people are used to. In your first trip to Japan, what was the main challenges you faced, from the language, the cultural barrier? What was the challenges Doc Williams, the human, faced?
I think you covered it there very well, really. It's a cultural shock going to Japan. It's unlike anywhere else you might visit, in the Western world. And I think taking the wrestling aside, because when we got into the ring and I got started on touring and everything, it got very comfortable for me to be wrestling the Japanese guys, and that became, comfortable for me very quickly. But I think the biggest kind of shock for a foreigner going to Japan is what you do with your spare time. When you're outside of the shows, you've got to find somewhere to eat. You've got to, entertain yourself so you don't become bored. You've got to, it's mundane things. You've got to do your laundry. It's things like this. It's just finding out what foods you can eat when you're there. What drinks you can drink, because you can't even interpret anything that you're looking at, especially back in the early 2000s, where there wasn't the internet in every hotel room, and there wasn't online translators on your phone. I don't think I even had a camera phone at that point. I think I just had, I don't even think mobile phones, cell phones worked in Japan back then, the English one. So, you're very limited, and it's just that learning experience and getting used to those sort of things, which really is a big culture shock when you go to Japan. The wrestling, it is what it is. You adapt to that quickly if you're a professional wrestler. That's the easiest part, really, of touring Japan, I found.
Perfect. I'll translate this to Spanish. Doc
Sure.
Williams nos menciona que la parte más complicada de viajar a Japón para Pro Wrestling Noah no fue luchar, luchar es el luchador profesional, ellos se adaptan rápido y es parte del trabajo, pero el shock cultural fue bastante fuerte. En los 2000, recordemos que no hay internet en los hoteles. En los hoteles no había wifi, no había televisor, no había teléfono inteligente, no había traductores en los teléfonos. Era como que, ok, ¿cómo me toca salir afuera a comprar comida después de los shows, entretenerme en Japón para no aburrirme, explorar un poco las calles, el idioma, la barrera cultural fue un poquito restante en un punto de su carrera mientras llega allí, porque obviamente vivía en una realidad distinta a la que vivimos ahora. Ahora mismo tenemos los teléfonos y con eso traducimos, pero antes las cosas no eran tan sencillas. Over there, you had the opportunity, as mentioned, to conquer the tag team titles with Scorpio. That dude was like a freak of an athlete since his beginning until now, because currently he can still do what he did before. To you, having the opportunity to earn the tag team titles in Japan along, a superstar like Scorpio, how did it feel for you?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, it's always, a great honor to be able to be given or to win titles of any magnitude, of any type. And it was funny because Scorpio was on the first tour. I was there, started with Noah, and he was kind of a mentor and a help for me throughout the whole of my Noah career. Really, he was pretty much on every tour I was on, and I learned a lot from him, not only about professional wrestling in Japan, but also about how to conduct myself behind the scenes, and the etiquette that's expected of you when you're in Japan and you work for a major company like Pro Wrestling Noah. So I'm just thankful for him that he was there and that he saw that I was a decent worker, and that I put the hard work and the effort in, the graft to get to where I was. So he kind of took me under his wing and wanted to impart his knowledge to me, So I've seen him be the opposite with some guys who maybe weren't as respectful in their dealings in Japan. But no, I'm very, very thankful to Scorpio.
Perfect, I'll translate this. Él menciona que la experiencia con Scorpio fue buena, tuvo la oportunidad de que Scorpio, o tuvo Scorpio lo llevara debajo de su ala en el periodo de tiempo que estuvo allí, quiso pasar ese conocimiento, impartirlo del que él aprendió a Doug Williams en aquel momento en Japón. Él dice que se siente muy agraciado de haber contado con la presencia de un talento como él, tratando de entonces enseñarle a él la clave de cómo sobrevivir y de cómo crecer en la industria de la lucha libre, básicamente. You had the opportunity to wrestle for Ring of Honor for a while in your career. How did that opportunity initially happen for you?
Well, my first show for Ring of Honor was 2002. I think it was their third show. Now, in 2001, I did a tournament in the States called King of the Indies, which was kind of the forerunner to Ring of Honor. Like the people that created Ring of Honor, they saw that tournament. And that was what inspired them to make a wrestling promotion based around that kind of technical high impact wrestling. And because I was one of those participants in that tournament, Ring of Honor actually wanted me from day one. So they wanted me from the first show, but whatever, I had booking conflict. So the first opportunity I had for them was, as I said, the third show, which I think was, I want to say March 2002.
I believe it was June 22nd, 2002, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, a few months later.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that sounds about right. Actually, now you say it, because it was sweltering hot. I can't believe how hot it was in the building. It was crazy.
Perfect, let me translate this. Él menciona que en su primer tour de Ring of Honor, antes de eso, un año antes, en el 2001, él trabajó algo que se llamaba King of the Indies, que fue como el precursor a todo este estilo de lucha libre que eventualmente conocimos. Él trabajó el tercer show de Ring of Honor en el año 2002, en el mes de junio, y una cosa llevó a la otra, y ahí tuvo la oportunidad entonces de tener una plataforma para llevar su carrera o exponerla al próximo nivel. En Ring of Honor, and outside of Ring of Honor as well, you had the opportunity to face a guy named Bryan Danielson, at that point American Dragon, or Daniel Bryan. How was your experience working with him?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I must have wrestled him dozens and dozens of times. I've wrestled him not only in Ring of Honor in America, I've wrestled him in Germany, I've wrestled him in the UK, I've wrestled him in France. We've tagged in Japan, oddly, but we never wrestled each other in Japan. But, you know, for a guy of his young age, you know, the sort of, you know, he's probably 10 years younger than I am. His ability and his experience was, you know, outstanding, and his work ethic as well was just tremendous. And we always had great matches. It was always so easy, and he always wanted to learn. You know, he wanted to learn British style. He wanted to learn all the things that made it different, so that he could incorporate it into you know, the entire wrestling package he became. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun times with Brian. He loves karaoke as well, so.
I'll translate this. Él menciona que en el tiempo que estuvo luchando, él tuvo la oportunidad de trabajar con Daniel Bryan múltiples veces en su carrera, no solo en Ring of Honor, en Francia, en Alemania, en Reino Unido, en todo el mundo luchó con este muchachito llamado Bryan Danielson, y él, lo que le gustaba era que Bryan siempre, obviamente, tenía más experiencia, pero Bryan siempre trataba de aprender algo nuevo, siempre estaba buscando aprender, en este caso, el estilo de lucha libre británica, estaba buscando aprender el estilo de lucha libre de todo el mundo para tratar de adaptarlo a ese estilo y perfeccionarlo. Y una cosa que menciona, un dato curioso, a Daniel Bryan le gusta el karaoke, así que ya lo sabemos para datos futuros. On 2006, like, we were playing with the timelines, so we can go back and forth often.
Yeah, that's fun.
So on 2006, you had the opportunity to had a tryout match for the WWE. I believe it was in England against Carlito. Do you remember that experience, you know, being a backstage ambience in WWE for the first time, backstage politics, but mainly the match itself? Like, do you recall that experience?
I do. I do recall it quite well. I mean, it was one of several times I was backstage as enhancement talent. Even though it's the only time they actually gave me any ring time. It was a dark match. And I think, you know, the main, I mean, everybody was very welcoming in the dressing room. I didn't make me change in a separate, I changed in the men's dressing room with all the other talent there. Everyone was very nice, and I didn't have any problems with that. I think most people knew who I was anyway, you know, from Ring of Honor, from Noah, etc. So I had a little bit, you know, I had a little bit of that going into the dressing room anyway. In respect to the match, it is what it is. When you're enhancement talent, you don't get to do much. You know, they're looking at your selling, they're looking at what you do. you know, to make their guy look better. And yeah, it was very short and sweet, but it was a fun experience. I can't you know, say that it wasn't. I didn't have any, as you say, backstage politics. I had no, you know, involvement or experience of any of that. I didn't experience any of the attitude that some of the guys had been known for back then at all. So, you know, it was all good. It was all good.
Perfect. Él menciona que su experiencia en WWE, él no tuvo esos problemas de política backstage, nada, ya todo el mundo sabía quién él era de Ring of Honor y de diferentes oportunidades que tuvo de exponer su talento. Él se cambió en el camerino de los talentos cuando estaba de talento enhancement, como él menciona, o talento de desarrollo, pero nunca tuvo un problema, todo el mundo sabía quién era él, todo el mundo fue muy cortés, fue muy amable, y su experiencia, por lo menos con ese momento en WWE, fue bastante positiva. You wrestle for TNA/Impact Wrestling back and forth pretty often, but everything started in 2003. Like you were 10 years into your career at that point. Who reached out to you the first time, you know, to go to the United States and wrestle in Nashville that night?
Well, I was already over for Ring of Honor, so
Okay.
it kind of slotted in between two sets of shows for Ring of Honor. Obviously, the weekend I was at Ring of Honor, then Wednesday night was in Nashville, and I mean, it's very hard for me to recall exactly, but I think Nigel McGuinness had got himself a tryout there, and he'd mentioned to them that I was also over. So they said, well, you know, if Doug can come down as well, then we'll give him a tryout match. So that's what I did. You know, I went with Nigel from Ring of Honor shows to Nashville, had a dark match against James Storm that night. And I wasn't, there was no expectation coming out of that. For me, it was just another payday at that time. You know, so it was interesting. It was interesting. And there was a lot of guys there that funnily enough, a lot of guys there that I didn't really know. I think they, you know, there was a lot of guys that worked for TNA that only worked kind of TNA and maybe the NWA Southern States and those sort of territories, you know, as opposed to the Ring of Honor, which was more of a Northeastern and Californian crowd, you know. So it was nice to meet some new guys like James Storm. I'd never met before that day, so that was interesting.
Perfect. Él nos menciona que en el periodo de tiempo que ya estaba con Ring of Honor en el año 2002, ocurre un acercamiento para debutar en TNA en el año 2003. Nigel McGuinness fue quien le hizo el acercamiento, o él entiende que fue Nigel McGuinness el que le hizo el acercamiento, y llega allí a lo que él le llama como que esto para mí no tenía ninguna expectativa, it was just another payday, fue solamente un día de pago extra, no expectativa ni nada. Llegó allí, se enfrentó a James Storm en una lucha, fue una experiencia increíble, fue muy bueno. Y allí tuvo oportunidad de conocer talento independiente que no trabajaba con más nadie que no fuese ni con TNA o NWA o básicamente en ese circuito de Tennessee, que no, el James Storm él no lo conocía antes hasta ese día, y así sucesivamente. La experiencia pues en ese momento fue buena. Fast forwarding a little bit in time, you were part of a huge storyline, and I'm talking about the British invasion in Impact Wrestling. Whose idea was to create this, and why do you think it was such a success inside the company?
Well, it was a Vince Russo creation, British Invasion.
Oh.
He was the one that put us together. I just think that it worked because myself and Nick and Rob, we just decided to have fun with it. You know, don't go totally over the top. We all knew our roles within the group and what we were there designated to do. And I think also we really benefited from TNA having an excellent tag team division at the time.
Yes.
We had, you know, Motor City Machine Guns, Beer Money there. We had Team 3D, Steiner and Booker were together. You know, it just made for a really great atmosphere and a really great, you know, great time to be a tag team in TNA. But I mean, the key to it really was just making sure that we got over with their fan base. That it being annoying heels, but also annoying heels that could wrestle very well. And I think that worked. That worked very well.
Él nos menciona que el British Invasion fue inicialmente una idea de Vince Russo. Russo crea esto. ¿Y por qué funcionó tan bien? Porque Rob Terry, Nick Aldis y Doug Williams decidieron have fun with it. Decidieron divertirse con eso, decidieron disfrutarlo. Y llevaron simplemente, they went with the flow. Ellos dejaron que las cosas fluyeran, dejaron que esa la historia llevara y también se beneficiaron de que había buenos equipos en TNA en aquel momento. Tú tenías a Booker T, a Scott Steiner, tú tenías a Team 3D, tú tenías a Motor City Machine Guns, tenías a Beer Money. Entonces, había buena división de pareja, ellos siendo un equipo se beneficiaron de eso y funcionó porque ellos le metieron empeño, porque la empresa le puso empeño y porque obviamente estaba todos los componentes necesarios para que el British Invasion fuese exitoso. Over there in Impact Wrestling, you were, you won the tag team titles as well. You won the television and the X Division title. The tag team titles you won it with Brutus Magnus at that point, now Nick Aldis. When the tag team division was really hot, as you mentioned. What do you recall the night you won the tag team titles, and what was the first thing that went through your mind when you hold it?
You know what? I cannot remember that night at all. I can't even remember who we faced. I remember winning the IWGP tag titles because that was controversial, and obviously that was Team 3D. But to be honest with you, I cannot remember us winning the tag titles at all. And if you remind me what the match is, I'll probably have a better idea. To be honest with you, if you've done your research, I hope you have.
Yeah, the tag team titles, it was in 2009. I have it write it down here. Let me go down through my notes.
Was it a four-way?
It's because I have it here. It is. You defeated Main Event Mafia against. It was a Bound for Glory. It was in 2008. Brutus Magnus and Doug Williams. Yeah, Main Event Mafia. Booker T and Scott Steiner. It was a fatal four or a full
four-way.
The full mayhem match.
What I remember about it was that
I think the other guys were Beer Money. We know the tag team titles were held by Main Event Mafia, which are Booker T and Scott Steiner. Team 3D due to the IWGP controversial, and I'm like 100% sure the other guys were Beer Money at that night.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I remember about that, and it was that Booker T and Steiner were far more open to ideas and suggestions than I expected them to be. And the appreciation I got from both of them for putting them over so much, bumping for them, making them look fantastic. I think I took a Frankensteiner off the top from Scott, and they really, really appreciated that. That's the main thing I kind of took away from that, is that these guys, they've been professionals for a long, long time. They've worked in WCW, WWE, and they still took time out of their day to come and say thank you for what I did to make them look good in that match. And that showed to me, that is professionalism at its height. And it also gave me a good insight into why they've been so successful in the past. And you hear stories, about maybe they were difficult to work with, and there was issues with them selling and things like that. But I only think these issues develop when people don't treat them with the proper respect, don't listen to them, and don't understand to work with them, and make them look good. And that's what we did, and that's kind of the main takeaway I had from that match that night.
Well, I'll translate this, because at that point, that was not pretty often. Like, you didn't have experienced veterans saying, "Hey, thank you for making me look good." I mean, you did have, but it wasn't that common. Let me translate this. Él menciona que ellos ganan los campeonatos en pareja, Brutus Magnus y él, en una lucha que era un Fatal Four Full Mayhem match, en donde estaban los Dudleys, estaban con las controversias de los títulos IWGP, que todos recordamos, estaban Scott Steiner y Booker T, que era Main Event Mafia, y el otro equipo era Beer Money. Dice, no recuerdo mucho de esa noche, sí recuerdo que obviamente hubo la controversia de los títulos de los Dudleys, pero que esa noche específicamente Booker T y Scott Steiner no era muy común. O sea, el profesionalismo de ellos, tipos que había estado en WCW, tipos que había estado en WWE, pues se acercaron a ellos, mira, gracias por hacerme lucir bien, fueron muy profesionales, muy educados, como que le dieron las gracias a Doug Williams y al mismo Brutus Magnus por haberles hecho, vamos a decirlo así, el trabajo, cosa que no era muy común en aquel momento dado. You over there, Main Event Mafia was a huge stable, but at one point, everything in Impact Wrestling changed. After Hogan arrived to the company, basically everything changed. What was your experience working with Hogan, either backstage or on the storylines, and basically everything? Like, How was your experience, working with Hulk Hogan directly?
Well, I didn't really have that much interface with Hogan. He came in at the beginning of 2010, and for the duration of 2010, I was X Division champion. I don't think that was a story, or I don't think that division is anything that he touched personally. And my interactions with him were pretty limited. It's only really at the end of 2010, I think, when they were trying to make a play for me to be a heavyweight guy, that he kind of, maybe didn't see that within me. And I sort of dropped down the card a bit. But I don't know the reasons for that. But from that year, 2010, it was all good for me. As I say, my interactions were even very, very limited. I had more interaction with Eric Bischoff than I did with Hogan, because Bischoff would, to his credit, make sure that I had my promos down. He'd listen to my promos backstage before I did them to make sure that I was getting the wording correctly and I was saying it in the way that the company wanted or the bookers wanted. So I'll give Eric Bischoff credit for that. He did show an interest in what I was doing.
Perfect. Él dice que Hogan llega en el 2010, no tuvo como que mucha experiencia con él, pero obviamente Hogan quería tipo heavyweight, tipo peso completo, y pues como que eso le afectó un poquito su posición en el roster o en el cartel, pero sí tenía esa oportunidad de hablar con Bischoff, por ejemplo, de decirle, mira, esta es mi promo, esto es lo que voy a hacer, quiero pues tu feedback en esto, para no estar diciendo una palabra incorrectamente, o básicamente para que lo que yo estuviese expresando en este papel fuese lo que la empresa quería de mí en aquel momento. Su experiencia tal vez no hubo mucha experiencia, pero pues al llegar las cosas definitivamente cambiaron drásticamente. The way you won the X Division champion, it was a particular thing because you didn't have the Feast or Fire briefcase. It was Rob Terry's briefcase, and you cashed it in, and you defeated Amazing Red, who, poor guy, like he defeated Samoa Joe. Everyone was like so happy. This guy defeated Joe, the shocker of the year. And then came in Doug Williams, and boom, new X Division champion. How do you feel working that story? But what do you recall of the audience's reaction that night? Because they weren't happy at all.
No, that's the whole point, isn't it? If I'm going to start my run off on on being a heel that everybody wants to see beaten, then how better than by doing it, by winning the belt in a means that is unfair and not really just. For me, I mean, my biggest concern is that the fans turn their back on me and just don't care about the fact that I've won it or not won it. As it was, I got genuine heel heat and managed to carry that through for my title run. So, I appreciate that, and I appreciate Red for working with me and putting me over as well. And in fact, all the X Division guys I worked through during that run, it was all really a lot of fun, and I had some good matches. All those guys were great.
Perfect. I'll translate this. Él menciona que cuando él gana el título, obviamente eso es lo que querían, que ese es el heel que todo el mundo quería ver derrotado en el piso, ese es el tipo que todo el mundo quería que perdiera, y de momento sale con el maletín, Feast or Fire, lo pone ahí en la mesa, canja el maletín, gana el título al pobre Amazing Red que acababa de ganar la Samoa Joe. Y él dice como que mi mayor temor es que a la gente no le importara que yo ganara, pero definitivamente dice como que le agradezco a la gente que siempre mantuvo ese interés en mí y tuvo la oportunidad de tener un momento bastante memorable en el roster. After that, you were stripped from the title, I believe, due to travel issues, or that's what, the situation stated at that moment. But you had the opportunity to recover that title one more time, this time from the hands of Frankie Kazarian. To you, to Doug Williams, the wrestler, and both to the human being, what does this belt, the X Division title, mean to you?
Well, just to come back to your point about being stripped of the title, I don't know if you remember, but a volcano erupted in Iceland and cut off the airspace, grounded all the flights between Europe and the United States at the time. So I was living in England still, and I couldn't actually get back to the States to defend it. So rightly or wrongly, they made the decision to strip me the title, and all they did is, as soon as I could get back there, they just put it back on me again, So that was kind of strange, but fair enough if that's their decision. In respect to what the X Division title means, well, it was relatively unique to TNA, to Impact Wrestling, and it was known for, exciting matches. Even though they always say there wasn't a weight limit, there was definitive style and a kind of look to the kind of guys that held that belt and ran in that division. And I think it was say an honour, but it was nice for them to have faith in me to present something different to the normal X Division guys, and to run with it. And it must have, for the duration that I held the belt and the fact that I was a 2-time champion, I like to think that there must have been some success to what I was doing. It must have got over to some degree. And I'm just thankful that they allow me to work the story that I worked and the character. And it was a lot of time. It was very, very different to anything I'd ever done before, which really, I think wrestling, a lot of times is you have to be very open to explore new opportunities and walk out of your comfort, take yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes. And it definitely made me do that. And but I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed that moment in my career.
Perfect, I'll translate this.
Yeah.
Él menciona que el campeonato de la División X, o que cuando él le quitan el título, no sé si recuerdan, fue lo de las cenizas que hubo en Europa, entiendo que fue un volcán, y hubo una nube completa en el cielo durante un tiempo largo, no se podía viajar de un país a otro, él estaba todavía viviendo en el Reino Unido o en UK, y pues no podía, pues, ¿qué vamos a hacer? Te quitamos el título y cuando llegues de regreso, pues te lo damos otra vez. Como que, ok, un poco extraño, pero vamos a hacerlo. Hicieron eso, se lo dieron a Kazarian, rápido que él llegó, se lo dieron nuevamente. ¿Qué significó el título de la División X para una persona como Doc Williams, que lo tuvo 2 veces en su carrera? Bueno, en aquel momento era un estilo distinto. O sea, no eran cruiserweights que te limitabas un peso en específico, como por ejemplo de tal peso hasta tal peso. No, el X Division title no tenía peso, no tenía límite en peso, sí tenía un límite en estilo. Todos tenían que más o menos tener un estilo similar. Por eso personas como Samoa Joe pudieron obtenerlo, como el mismo Doc Williams, como el mismo Senshi en su momento dado. Pero el detalle es ese. En su caso, el título de eso lo que significó para él fue que la empresa depositó una confianza en él como para él poder ser, ok, esta es la persona que nosotros queremos impulsar, esta es la persona en la que nosotros confiamos, y pues, obviamente se sintió bien que la empresa confiara en ti y te diera la oportunidad de sí de hacer un nombre, pero de tener la oportunidad de representar a Impact Wrestling en aquel momento fue simplemente hermoso. After a while with the company, both parts decided to part separate ways. For a moment, you were partially retired for the wrestling industry. Why did you took that decision when you still had a lot of left in the tank to give to the audience?
Are you talking about when I was released from TNA, or are you talking about later?
The retirement.
2018.
That's correct, sir.
Right. So my decision there was based on a number of things. It was based on me wanting to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
It was based on a number of injuries that I had that I really needed looking towards. And at the time as well, I kind of thought that I'd done everything I wanted to in wrestling. There was a lot of new guys. The business was kind of exploding. It was really, really popular in the UK. The independent scene was just phenomenal. And I thought it's the right time, so I made that decision, So, and at the time, I think it seemed like it felt like the right decision to make.
Perfect. Él nos menciona que cuando él toma la decisión de retirarse en el 2018, ocurre por diferentes motivos. La primera, él quería estar más tiempo con su familia. Recuerden que cuando él estaba trabajando en Impact Wrestling, estaba trabajando en Ring of Honor, en Pro Wrestling, no, él estaba en todo el mundo. Era traveling todo el tiempo, no había tiempo para estar con la familia, pues quería dedicarse a su familia, y en adición tenía unos injuries o unas lesiones que él quería trabajar y que quería cuidar y quería sanar. En aquel momento ya la industria independiente, específicamente en el Reino Unido, estaba frondosa, estaba bastante activa, las personas estaban bastante invested en eso, y pues en aquel momento fue un poquito difícil, pero tuvo que hacerlo. However, after almost 3 years outside of the wrestling industry, this year in 2021, Doc Williams thought that it was the perfect moment to return to the wrestling industry in the middle of a pandemic, which is situation globally is complicated. Why do you decided that 2021 was the year to come back into the inside the square circle?
Well, I mean, the main reason was, I think, you know, obviously, as you say, because of the pandemic and the lockdown that ensued for the majority of 2020, it kind of made me realise that when you have the opportunities to do the things that you love in your life, then then you should take that opportunity. I had neck surgery. My other injuries are kind of healed, and I just felt that I'm going to come back and do it for as long as I can while I'm enjoying myself and have fun with it. It was just really a result of that whole scenario caused by the pandemic and caused by people, myself to be locked away, locked down, and traveling had disappeared. I couldn't go to the gym anymore. The wrestling, all those things, you just realise how much you miss them. And coupled with that, of course, as well, is the pandemic and other things as well really hit British wrestling hard. So, part of my reasoning for coming back really is to try and help rebuild British independent wrestling here again, back to, hopefully back to the heights it was in 2018, 2019, and help a lot of the younger guys that probably suffered major setbacks in their careers in the last couple of years because they haven't been able to develop and get to where they want to. And part of the reason come back is to help those guys as well, help British wrestling and get it back to the levels it was getting to before the pandemic hit.
Perfect. Él menciona que él toma la decisión de regresar a la industria de la lucha libre porque en medio del encierro de la pandemia del 2020 no podía ir a los gimnasios, no podemos hacer esto, no podemos hacer lo otro. Y él se puso a pensar como que si tengo la oportunidad de hacer lo que yo amo, lo que me apasiona y lo que tengo en mi corazón, ¿por qué no hacerlo? ¿Por qué no dar mi granito de arena? ¿Por qué no aportar mi granito de arena a la industria? Y entonces él dice, yo me hice una cirugía del cuello, mis lesiones ya han sanado, vamos a intentarlo. Y lo que él quiere es volver a llevar la escena independiente del Reino Unido al punto en donde estuvo antes de la pandemia, en el 2018-2019. Hubo mucho talento joven que él quiere elevar y que quiere darle la oportunidad de crecer en la industria dentro de su mismo circuito, que es el Reino Unido, para que entonces tenga la oportunidad de llegar al sitial en donde estaban pautados a llegar y que lamentablemente por la pandemia todo se cortó en este periodo de tiempo. Empresas como ICW, como Rev Pro en el Reino Unido, entonces están teniendo la oportunidad de beneficiarse de los servicios de Doug Williams directamente. Before we go to our last question, I wanted to say something in Spanish as well. Doug Williams está disponible en todas las redes sociales, específicamente está disponible en Instagram como @DougWilliamsGB, Doug Williams GB, ahí lo pueden seguir. En Twitter está disponible como @DougWilliamsUK, @DougWilliamsUK en el área de Twitter. También lo pueden para toda la mercancía, para camisas, para memorabilia, para todo. Hay un solo lugar para ir y es dougwilliams.merch.global, dougwilliams.merch.global para toda la mercancía de Doug Williams que usted desee adquirir. Puede hacerlo a través de ese website, dougwilliams.merch.global, y a todos los promotores de todo el mundo en México, en Chile, Argentina, Puerto Rico, Estados Unidos, Panamá, Costa Rica, etcétera, etcétera. Hay un solo lugar para contactarlo. Un caballero que tiene 27 años de experiencia en la industria de la lucha libre, que ha luchado en Impact Wrestling, que ha luchado en Ring of Honor, en Pro Wrestling Noah, que ha luchado con los mejores que hay en la industria actualmente y aquellos que también ya no están. Hay un solo lugar para conseguirlo y es bookdougwilliams@gmail.com. bookdougwilliams@gmail.com. Es un solo lugar. Hagan su correo electrónico, envíenle su solicitud. Si lo quieren en Panamá, si lo quieren en Puerto Rico, en República Dominicana, en Chile, Argentina, Colombia, donde sea que lo quieran, bookdougwilliams@gmail.com y ahí pueden conseguirlo directamente. Before we go to our last question, I wanted to thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor to have you here as our guest. Thank you, sir. After 27 years inside the wrestling industry, once you look back and you've seen everything you've accomplished so far, was this success you had inside the wrestling industry something you were expecting? Like from the day you started here, were you always aiming to the top and you said, hey, I was born for this?
No, not at all. In fact, I think my aspirations in the first couple of years was just to, build a nice little part-time career wrestling in the United Kingdom.
Really?
Because even though it was a downtime in the 90s, there was still hundreds of shows every year that you could appear on. And it was only really when I, kind of started working on my career, working and taking it seriously, that I realized, yes, I could probably get somewhere. And Japan was ultimately always my main goal, just because stylistically that was what I was best suited for. So to be able to have done that and to work for a major office in Japan really was a career highlight for me. But no, I never ever, when I started, expected that it would go the way it did. And I'm very, very thankful for that.
Perfect. I'll translate this. Y me parece bastante interesante. Él dice que él no pensaba que iba a tener este éxito. De hecho, él pensaba que esto iba a ser como que un part-time career dentro del circuito independiente de Reino Unido y nada más. Y de momento, sí, obviamente en los 90 habían como cientos de shows en donde te pagaban allá. Tiene la oportunidad después de ir a Japón y cobrar un dinero excelente con una empresa como Pro Wrestling Noah. Pero no es algo que este éxito que él ha tenido en 27 años de carrera de viajar al mundo entero, eso nunca estuvo en planes. Era algo más a tiempo parcial. Y me parece bastante interesante que dentro de 27 años después, que él tenga la oportunidad de mirar hacia atrás en el 93 cuando todo comenzó y ver como que wow, o sea, el éxito que ha alcanzado este hombre en su carrera. Sir, as mentioned before, thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor to have you as our guest, and always wishing you success in both your career and in your personal life as well.
Thank you very much, Michael, and to you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, and let's wrap this up in Spanish. Este fue Doug Williams y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en español.